Caitlin Clark recently appeared at the Prada Fall/Winter show in Milan, wearing suede pumps valued at over $1,000. A move that coincided with a period of significant tension regarding WNBA player compensation. While the league office manages the optics of an off-season freeze, its most prominent star was featured at a premier international fashion event. As Commissioner Cathy Engelbert discusses the financial constraints of the league, Clark's presence in Milan highlights a growing disparity between the league's reported financial struggles and the individual market value of its top talent. The appearance at Milan Fashion Week was more than a casual outing. Arriving at the Fondazione Prada in a striped cropped polo, khaki trousers, and a gray overcoat, Clark's attire was noted by analysts for its sporty chic aesthetic. Seated front row next to freestyle skier Eileen Gu, the resulting images circulated widely during a time when WNBA business operations were at a standstill. Clark has been associated with Prada since becoming the first athlete the brand dressed for a draft, but her high-profile presence in Italy during a period of internal labor disputes has intensified the scrutiny on league leadership. The WNBA is currently facing a March 10 deadline that will dictate the future of the 2026 season. The league has informed the players' union that without a signed term sheet by that date, the schedule will be impacted, likely leading to delays and suspended salaries. This deadlock has frozen free agency, trades, and the expansion draft for new franchises in Toronto and Portland. As Commissioner Engelbert maintains that player demands are unrealistic, the league's primary star is operating within a luxury market that the league claims it cannot afford for its broader membership. Tensions between the commissioner and the players have escalated following reports from Nafisa Collier. It was alleged that Engelbert suggested Clark should be grateful for the platform provided by the WNBA, as it enabled her lucrative off-court deals. Engelbert has denied these reports, calling them inaccurate and disheartening. However, the situation underscores a shift in power. Clark's independent financial success suggests she has moved beyond traditional league controls, reducing her reliance on the marketing agreements the league uses to maintain a lower salary cap. Despite the league's claims of financial difficulty, the 2025 season was successful enough to trigger a revenue-sharing clause for the first time in history. This resulted in $16 million in excess revenue, half of which is allocated to player bonuses and half to a marketing pool. This surplus has become a primary obstacle in collective bargaining. Players are requesting 26% of gross revenue, while the league is offering a share of net revenue, the amount remaining after all operating and travel expenses are paid. The financial gap between these two positions is estimated to reach hundreds of millions of dollars over the next decade. Compensation is not the only issue. Since 1999, franchises have been required to provide housing for players, a standard practice in a league where rookie salaries are often insufficient for major metropolitan areas. A recent proposal from the league suggests phasing out this housing requirement by 2028. Players such as Natasha Cloud have criticized the move, noting that salary increases are ineffective if they must be spent entirely on individual rent. The contrast between these proposed cuts and the luxury associated with the league's top stars has become a focal point for critics of the current financial narrative. The pressure continues to build as the league prepares for a new $2.2 billion media deal. This contract will define the economic structure of women's basketball for the next decade. If an agreement is not reached by March 10, the 2026 season, scheduled for May 8, may be in jeopardy. Sophie Cunningham stated on her podcast that the negotiations are currently illogical, with the league presenting proposals that do not address the revenue-sharing models the players have prioritized. The current situation reflects a divide within the organization. On one side, the league office seeks to protect the bottom line and ensure long-term financial viability. On the other, a new generation of stars recognizes their individual influence on ticket sales, television ratings, and market trends. Each high-profile appearance outside of the WNBA framework serves as a reminder of the leverage these athletes now hold. Clark's presence in Milan highlights the current power dynamics in professional women's sports. While the commissioner navigates the optics of these appearances, the audience increasingly supports the athletes. As the March 10 deadline nears, the negotiations remain contentious. The league faces a choice between meeting the players' demand for a 26% revenue share or risking a work stoppage during its most successful era. The current standoff is a critical moment for the sport. While the league attempts to maintain traditional operational models, Clark's individual success represents a shift in the balance of power. The coming days will determine if a deal can be reached before the March 10 deadline. Failure to do so would not only jeopardize the start of the season, but would also challenge the current leadership's ability to manage a league that has grown beyond its original structure. As the focus moves from Milan back to the negotiating table, reports suggest the two sides remain far apart. The rhetoric has become increasingly personal, and the stakes for the 2026 season are high. Clark's strategic positioning, both on and off the court, suggests she remains ahead of the current defensive posture of the league. The central question remaining is whether the league office will adapt to the reality that its players possess more independent leverage than ever before. The expansion of the WNBA into Toronto and Portland has introduced a logistical stalemate that complicates the league's path forward. General managers for these new franchises are currently operating in a vacuum, having been hired to build organizations that lack a formal mechanism for acquiring talent. Without an expansion draft, these front offices cannot finalize coaching staffs or secure localized sponsorships tied to specific player identities. The league's decision to suspend these drafts has created a ripple effect throughout basketball operations, where scouting reports for unprotected players are becoming obsolete. This delay prevents new markets from capitalizing on the current surge in interest, effectively stalling the growth the league office claims to prioritize. Beyond the expansion mechanics, the financial debate over charter travel remains a primary point of contention. For over 2 decades, the WNBA mandated commercial travel, citing the prohibitive costs of private aviation. While a full-time charter program was implemented in 2024, the long-term funding for this service is now a central figure in the labor dispute. The league office views the $12 million annual expense as an overhead cost that must be deducted from net revenue before any player shares are calculated. Conversely, the players' union argues that professional travel standards are a baseline requirement for athlete health and performance, not a luxury that should be leveraged against their salaries. This disagreement highlights the fundamental divide in how both parties define operational necessity versus profit. The leadership of the WNBA has shifted its tactical approach to mirror that of the more established men's professional leagues. Under the guidance of veteran leadership, the union is no longer negotiating for incremental gains but is instead demanding a structural overhaul of the league's economic model. The 2025 revenue trigger, which identified $16 million in excess profit, served as a proof of concept for the union's argument that the league's growth has outpaced its existing compensation structure. This surplus was largely driven by record-breaking ticket sales and merchandise revenue, particularly in markets like Indiana and Chicago. The union contends that because players are the primary drivers of this growth, they should be entitled to a fixed percentage of every dollar the league earns, regardless of how the league chooses to spend its operational budget. The league's counter-argument focuses on the concept of long-term sustainability. Commissioner Engelbert has frequently pointed to the fact that the WNBA has historically operated at a loss, relying on subsidies from the NBA to maintain operations. From the league's perspective, the recent infusion of capital from the new media rights deal must be used to build a war chest that can sustain the league through potential economic downturns. The league office maintains that a 26% share of gross revenue would leave the organization vulnerable, as it would be forced to pay out millions to players even in years where operating expenses exceed income. This net versus gross debate is not merely a mathematical disagreement, it is a battle over who should bear the financial risk of the league's expansion. The proposed phase-out of player housing by 2028 represents another significant fracture in the negotiations. Since the league's inception in 1997, providing housing has been a standard contractual obligation, particularly important for players on the lower end of the salary scale. In high-cost markets such as Los Angeles, New York, and Seattle, the value of provided housing can often exceed 30% of a player's total compensation. The league's proposal to replace this benefit with a modest salary increase has been met with significant resistance. Players argue that in the current real estate market, the proposed stipends would not cover the cost of living in the cities where they are required to play, effectively resulting in a pay cut for the majority of the roster. This housing war has become a symbol for the broader struggle of the veteran player. While top-tier stars like Clark have the financial independence to navigate these changes, the middle class of the WNBA, the role players and veteran bench contributors, relies heavily on these league-provided protections. The union's refusal to concede on housing indicates a commitment to protecting the entire membership, rather than just the stars who drive the headlines. It also places the league in a difficult position regarding its public image, as it becomes increasingly difficult to justify cutting housing benefits at a time when the league is celebrating a multi-billion-dollar media valuation. The upcoming $2.2 billion media deal is the most significant financial milestone in the history of the sport, yet it has become a source of anxiety rather than celebration within the boardroom. The deal, which involves Disney, Amazon, and NBC, includes specific re-evaluation clauses that allow for adjustments based on viewership metrics and market conditions. Wana krited door tomsledig hoods, discordistorp, in kokamaking koduis, but the full impact of this deal is realized. However, the players see this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to secure their financial future. The union's demand for a true revenue-sharing model is based on the belief that the current media deal is actually undervalued, given the unprecedented ratings seen during the 2024 and 2025 seasons. The international basketball community is also closely monitoring the situation. For years, WNBA players have supplemented their income by playing overseas during the winter months, often earning 3 to 4 times their WNBA salaries in countries like Turkey, China, and Italy. As the WNBA seeks to implement prioritization rules that require players to be present for the start of the American season, the financial stakes have changed. If the WNBA cannot offer competitive salaries that offset the loss of international income, it risks a talent drain where players may choose to prioritize high-paying European or Asian contracts over a league that is cutting benefits like housing and travel. The March 10th deadline is not just a date on the calendar, it is a force majeure trigger for the league's broadcast and venue partners. If a term sheet is not signed by this date, the league must begin the process of notifying arenas and television networks of potential cancellations. This triggers a series of legal and financial penalties that could cost the league tens of millions of dollars in lost sponsorships and breach of contract fees. The commissioner's office is using this deadline as leverage to pressure the union into a deal, while the union appears willing to test the league's resolve, betting that the owners will not risk destroying the most profitable window in the league's history. Public sentiment has leaned heavily toward the players, fueled by the visibility of the new rookie class. The Caitlin Clark effect has transformed the WNBA from a niche sports property into a mainstream cultural phenomenon. This shift has changed the nature of the negotiations. In previous CBA cycles, the league could rely on a lack of public scrutiny to maintain a conservative financial posture. Today, every proposal and counterproposal is analyzed by a global audience. When details of the league's attempt to cut housing benefits were leaked, the resulting backlash on social media and in the press put the commissioner's office on the defensive. The league is no longer just negotiating with the union, it is negotiating with its own brand reputation. The internal dynamics of the team owners are also shifting. The WNBA is comprised of 2 distinct groups: independent owners who own only a WNBA franchise, and joint owners who own both an NBA and a WNBA team. These 2 groups have different financial priorities. Joint owners often view the WNBA as a long-term brand asset and are more willing to absorb short-term losses to secure labor peace. Independent owners, however, are more sensitive to immediate cash flow and are often the loudest voices calling for net revenue models and benefit cuts. This internal friction among the ownership group has made it difficult for the commissioner to present a unified front at the bargaining table. As the negotiations continue, the focus remains on the structural integrity of the league. The current CBA was designed for a league that was struggling for relevance. It is now being applied to a league that is experiencing hypergrowth. This mismatch is at the heart of every disagreement, from marketing agreements to the definition of excess revenue. The players are no longer asking for a seat at the table, they are pointing out that they built the table. The Prada moment in Milan served as a visual representation of this new reality. It signaled that the league's stars are now global icons with options that extend far beyond the traditional boundaries of the WNBA. The final days leading up to the March 10th deadline will likely involve a series of bridge proposals intended to delay the most difficult decisions. However, the union has signaled that it is tired of temporary fixes. They are seeking a deal that mirrors the economic freedom found in the NBA, including unrestricted free agency and a transparent accounting of all league revenues. If the league continues to insist on a model that prioritizes the bottom line over player investment, the risk of a total work stoppage becomes a reality. This would not only halt the 2026 season but could permanently damage the relationship between the league and its most valuable assets. The resolution of this dispute will define the legacy of Cathy Engelbert's tenure as commissioner. She is tasked with balancing the demands of a diverse ownership group against the needs of a workforce that has more leverage than ever before. The outcome will serve as a blueprint for other women's professional leagues around the world. A deal that includes gross revenue sharing and protected benefits would signal a new era of professional sports, while a failure to reach an agreement would be seen as a catastrophic mismanagement of the sport's most successful period. The narrative of the WNBA is no longer one of survival, but of evolution. The civil war described by insiders is the natural result of a league outgrowing its old skin. The tension is a byproduct of success, but it is tension that must be resolved to avoid a collapse. As the clock nears the deadline, the focus is not just on the numbers on a term sheet, but on the vision for the future of the game. Whether the 2026 season tips off on May 8th depends on whether the league is willing to accept that the old rules no longer apply in a world where its players are the primary source of power.